I like to bring
Mhm.
women in who most people do not know about because, as you said, there are numerous, numerous women around the world, throughout the world, on every continent, in every country, that are doing phenomenal, phenomenal work that we haven't heard of them. And that's important to know because you don't need to be a famous person, right? There's so much. The point of the book is that each of us, and the reason why the book is titled She Is Me, is to show that each of us can can accomplish so much by helping others.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview inspiring and influential guests who are making their mark on the world and contributing to the common good. Making your mark, big or small, is creating your legacy, and it's one of the proven ways we can age with energy and deep contentment. Zestful Aging Podcast is my legacy. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. To find out more about this podcast, my web courses, and my brand new book, Not Just Chatting, How to Become a Master Podcast Interviewer, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. And while you're there, sign up for my monthly email newsletter, The Zest, where you will get behind the scenes looks at my interviews and other fun tidbits. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker. Find out more at judybanker.com. Ever wonder what the host of Zestful Aging does when she's not podcasting? Creating one-of-a-kind earrings, of course. I've just opened an Etsy shop called Zestful Design, no S, and it showcases my fun, comfortable, and zesty polymer earrings. These earrings are fun to make and fun to wear. So check out my new shop, Zestful Design, on Etsy. Well, I've got my little loyal Jack Russell Sparky right by my side, so let's begin. President Obama famously said that if women ruled the world, we'd be in a lot better shape. Our guest today has spent her entire career elevating women's voices and exposing inequalities that exist all over the world. She's worked with the most influential women, including Gloria Steinem and Billie Jean King, and I am so excited to talk to her today. Lori Sokol is the executive director and editor in chief of Women's E-News, an award winning nonprofit news organization that reports on the most crucial issues impacting women and girls around the world. She's also the author of the award winning book, She Is Me: How Women Will Save the World. Welcome to the show, Lori.
Thank you, Nicole. It's really a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We were talking off mic about I'm green with jealousy that you got to hang out with Billie Jean King for a little while. I mean, I guess everyone has their fandom, right? And you've interviewed a lot of, in your book, tremendously brilliant women, but boy, that's the one I would give my right arm. So that's really special.
Well, what's so wonderful about her and every woman in the book, all 30 women that I interviewed, is that even though they may be perceived as icons in society, whether it be Billie Jean King, Gloria Steinem, also I interviewed Lima Bowie, who's a Nobel Peace Prize recipient who led the uprising in Liberia, among 27 other amazing women. The reason why I chose these women in particular is because as successful as they are also very humble and modest. Okay, because it's not about them. It's about their causes. Okay, there are some people who use a cause to expand their own egos and to make a name for themselves. But these women, all 30 of them, it's not about their name. It's about the work they are doing and have been dedicating not only their work and their lives to supporting, empowering other women and girls.
It's funny that you started us off this way, because as I was reading your book, I thought these are some of whom I have to admit I'm not familiar with, and I thought, as somebody who interviews a lot, I thought, I wonder how Lori chose these women, because there are a lot of women out there doing tremendous work. And I was curious what you used as your, how you made a decision, who to choose.
Yes, and that is the major reason. Being head of Women's News and actually being a journalist for over 30 years, I've met and interviewed many people, women and men. And although I wanted to include some big names, that also always helps attract attention to a
That's
book,
right?
right? Like Gloria Steinem and Billie Jean King, etc. I always make a point of including, whether it be in my book or whether it be Women's News honors 21 leaders for the 21st century every year. I like to bring women in who most people do not know about, because, as you said, there are numerous women around the world, throughout the world, on every continent, in every country, that are doing phenomenal work that we haven't heard of them. And that's important to know, because you don't need to be a famous person, right? There's so much. The point of the book is that each of us, and the reason why the book is titled She Is Me, is to show that each of us can accomplish so much by helping others, whether it be in one's family, which I think is the most crucial and important and long-lasting way to make an impression and to empower people, particularly if you're a parent, whether it be in your community, whether it be at work, whether it be in a more public platform, on stage, not on stage, whether it be volunteering. There are so many ways, and it's within all of us, each woman and each man, to be able to create and to help others in all different ways. And no way is small. We started out by saying small ways and big ways. No, we have to understand that nothing is small. By helping one person, by making a difference in one person's life, is invaluable, really invaluable.
I saw that Sophie Polderman's gotten recognized by you. She was a guest of mine, the author of Seducing and Killing Nazis, and also an attorney who does all kinds of humanitarian work. And I was so glad to see you
Yes.
acknowledge her work.
She is an example of what we're just talking about. In the book she wrote, Seducing and Killing Nazis, I read that book and I was blown away by these three women. And I thought to myself, if I were alive during that time, during World War II, I would just hope that I had the courage to do what they did. How many people would have the courage to do that? And so I want to be able to bring not only Sophie's story to light, but their stories to light, because those are true heroes. And too often
I asked her, how do you imagine, we wrestled with that question, like, I want to believe that I would do the same thing. And she said, well, you have to understand, these people were coming into their town. They were invaders. There was something so noxious and violent about, that's an understatement, but, that there was, it's hard for us to imagine and put ourselves in that place.
It is, but it isn't, because if we look at these last 4 years under the Trump presidency,
yes,
okay, and people were and people were saying, now we know how Nazi Germany could have developed and how those people could have done what they did to murder innocent individuals, men, women, babies, children. How could people have done that? Well, that's why history is important, because we have to learn from history if we're fortunate enough to. So during the Trump presidency, we witnessed so many people, because they belong to marginalized groups, whether they be members of the LGBTQ community, whether they be Jewish people, whether they be people of color, women, um, Asian Americans, right, being targeted because of the way they look, the color of their skin, who
How
they
they
worship,
worship.
who they
Yep.
worship, who they choose to have as lovers, being targeted and even killed. We had
Yes.
neo-Nazis, right, marching in the
Yes.
streets.
Yes.
So
Emboldened.
emboldened by him and his supporters, and they still are. So
Yep.
to say, how could this have happened? Oh, not only did it happen, but it can happen again, and it
Yes.
was happening again, and it could still happen again. So
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
this is why we learn history, to hopefully learn from the evil and the terror that individuals can inflict upon one another.
And it's like drip by drip by drip.
Slowly but
Yep.
surely, but that's how it's done. And you repeat it, and you repeat it, and you
Yep.
repeat it, which is what, Hitler did. The first thing a fascist does is call the news media fake news, because then people don't know what to believe. It's fascism 101, and that's exactly what Trump did. He followed other fascists' rule book, and so therefore any truth that is revealed through journalism, he gave people license to say, well, it's fake news, even if it were true. So then you don't believe facts anymore, right? And so here we have COVID, and you have all these people who are not getting vaccinated because he called it a hoax. Meanwhile, he
Yep.
has been vaccinated and
Yep.
did it secretly,
Yep.
but of course everyone found out. And now you still have these people who are not being vaccinated, and with the Delta,
Yep. The
right,
variant.
the
Yep.
variant, these are the people who now are most apt to be hospitalized because of COVID and who are dying. Well, what can you say about that? I don't even know what to say about that. You have to really look out for yourselves and make the right choices, and not believe the real fake news, which is politicized. So we can get more into that, but I think I'll stop
Yes.
there.
Well, I think that might be a very lengthy
It
conversation
would
with
be.
great voices and yeah, it's
Yes.
yeah, we're living in such a weird time. But I want to get back. You mentioned history, and I want to ask you about how your personal history and your relationship with your dad and your brother, and maybe to a lesser extent your mom, how did that shape your thinking? You were an athlete, you skipped a grade in school. Obviously, you were a talented woman and you were a talented girl. How did your experiences growing up in, we'll call it politely, a non-validating family, really move you to do the work you're doing now?
Okay, well, first of all, there's no need to be polite, because so many of us experience what I've experienced, and we have to call it what it is, which is a violently abusive household. Okay. And that's what it is. We don't want to make light of it.
No euphemisms.
No, not at all, because we're talking about truth, and that is truth, and we can't deal with issues like that unless we call it for what it is. Name it. So I think it's important to name it, and because I'm sure so many people who are listening to this are also, or know of people who are experiencing it, and we need to call it what it is, because it's only by doing that we acknowledge the trauma that exists, and then can work through that trauma. So, which I've been doing for decades, and I've done a lot of great work with psychotherapists. I know you are one as well, and it's actually something that never ends. And I think everybody should go through it, no matter if you've gone through a violent household, abusive childhood or not, because there are always issues. But to answer your question, I actually say that I was the victim of misogyny when I was still in the womb, and I'll tell you why. Because my name, Lori, and it's spelled Lori, I was named by my mother, and it was spelled specifically that way because I was born in 1960, and in the 1950s there was a very successful television series called How to Marry a Millionaire. And the main character in the series was named Lori, and it was spelled Lori, and she figured if she names me Lori and spells it the exact same way, I will then be lucky enough to have the success to marry a millionaire.
What a way to start.
That's the way I started life, or actually even before I started life. And I remember I don't know how old I was, 6, 7, or 8, and I asked my mother, well, we were talking about the name, and I said, well, what if I become the millionaire, and then I could marry whoever I want? And she was not pleased. No, that's not how you do it. Right? That's not how you do it. So, yeah, so what you had mentioned that I was fortunate enough to be born with skills in terms of and abilities, intelligence. I taught myself to read when I was, 4 or 5 years old because I was very sick as a child. I write about that in my book, the opening line to the book, which the first chapter is about me. And the opening line is, when I was 5 years old, I wanted to die. And of course, that is a very compelling sentence because you think of what child at 5 years old would be so depressed and to look at the world around her and just want to end it. And I did, because my world was really horrible. As one therapist said to me, I was living an inner Holocaust. My father was violent, was physically abusive. If I said the wrong thing, if I stood the wrong way, if I held my head the wrong way, if I held my hands the wrong way, if
chewing or something, or breathing.
If I breathed the wrong, he would watch the way I breathed. But a lot of times he'd watch from behind a tree or a building, so I wouldn't know. And then I would come home, and then, all hell would break loose. And the word wrong was a word I heard every day. There is something wrong with me. He told me that daily. My mother put it in the form of a question. She would say, "What's wrong with you?" But the word wrong was something I was told I was every single day growing up there. I couldn't understand, and I had an older brother who viewed me as, I ruined his life because I excelled academically when he didn't. Athletically, I was just a natural born athlete, whether it be baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, ping pong, anything. People would say I was born with a racket in my hand. Tennis, right? We mentioned Billie Jean King. And I made him look bad because he is the boy. And in my family, the boy is supposed to be smarter, more athletically inclined, and I was. And I was actually punished for bringing home good grades at the end of the year when my brother didn't, and he often did not. So what was confusing for me was, why would I be born with these talents if I wasn't meant to use them? It made no sense. Right? I mean, why would I have these talents if I'm not meant to use them? And so it was very, very difficult. So I really thought that I should have been born a boy in that family. And at one point, my father actually said, which was the worst thing to say in front of my brother, was that I should have been the boy. I'll never forget when he said it, and my heart just fell, because I thought, oh my God, what a horrible thing to say about me and in front of my brother, and to let you know how it all ended. So yes, I went on to get a PhD in psychology. I'm a published writer. I'm an award-winning author. I left their home when I was 21. My mother said the only way I will be able to leave that home was by getting married. So I did get married. I just turned 21. The marriage lasted 2 years. It was not a good choice at all. But at least I could say, okay, Mom,
your ticket out.
I got right. It was my ticket out.
Hi, listeners. A quick interruption to tell you about a powerful tool I actually rediscovered after 15 years that will help you with stress, anxiety, and depression. I'm talking about the Meditations from Health Journeys created by trauma expert Bella Ruth Napperstack. When I had to have major surgery many years ago, I listened to these meditations, and it was enormously helpful. Health Journeys meditations are a little different than the run-of-the-mill meditations that you can find on apps. They're scientifically created and are used in over 3,000 hospitals. I highly recommend them and I use them myself. You can go to zestfulaging.com or nicolechristina.com and you will see a direct link. I hope you find them helpful and I'm interested in your experience. Now back to the show. Did you get validation? And I mean, I'm sure your teachers appreciated your abilities. Did you get validation from mentors, teachers, coaches saying, you're not wrong. In fact, you're quite right.
That's a very good question. And as a therapist, I know that there had to have been someone, right? Right. We always think there had to have been someone. So in early grades 1 through 5, yes, I was always in the top class in those grades, 1 through 5. I wasn't necessarily the smartest, but yeah, I was always in the top grade. And but then I went to middle school, and that was horrible because I was bullied incessantly. But that's when I skipped a year. I was in the top class. What we did in New York, if you, based upon your national reading and math exams that you would take, every year, if you scored a certain level or higher, yeah, which I did, I was put in a special program where we went through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in 2 years. So I did that, but there was no support coming from my family. So in high school, I really didn't care. My parents wanted me to be a secretary, but not just any secretary, a secretary for the post office. My father spent 35 years in the post office. My mother was a civil servant. I had uncles who were in the post office, and they thought that would be a great job for me because I could type. And as my mother said, I'd work in an office where there's carpeting, which was a big deal to work with his carpeting.
What a low bar she had for...
not only was a low bar, but it was more than that. It was they didn't want me to do any better. They didn't want me to because my mother had me to take care of her. I don't know if you read Alice Miller's book, Drama of the Gifted Child.
I certainly did.
Okay, so that was the relationship with me and my mother. Even from the very beginning, when a mother holds her infant, her newborn, the way, if the mother wants the baby to be there for her, the way the mother looks into the baby's eyes, the way she holds the baby is a very different way than if the mother is to be protective of that baby. It was to be the reverse. And my mother was physically abused by my father, and I was her protector. I saved my allowance for her on a weekly basis, so she had money because she was afraid to go to my father. I was her protector. I was her parent. It's not it's not the role that a child should have growing up. And what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you are those you need protection from? So I did not have anyone in particular. I was a voracious reader. Pippi Longstocking, I read.
I remember you loved her spirit, and she was just hanging out with her animals, right?
Well, but not only, she was on a desert island where she had to, very independent, where she had to get her own food, right? She had the pet monkey. She had to build her own shelter.
Oh.
Okay, she had to protect herself from the cannibals on that island. My mother hated the fact that I read that book. Not that she didn't know what was inside the book, but she just saw a woman, a girl with freckles, long red hair and pigtails, toothy smile with a pet monkey on a deserted island. She was like, no, I don't want my mother.
That's not the direction she wanted you to go in.
No. But
sassiness was not.
And to have the courage, that she wanted me to play with dolls and Barbie dolls, and I had no interest whatsoever. And so then at the age of 12 years old, something happened. I found Ms. Magazine, which spoke to me. Gloria Steinem, Ms. Magazine. I would read through every page over and over again, but particularly the letters to the editor at the beginning of the magazine were written by other women and girls around the country who felt like I did. And so for the first time in my life, I knew I was not alone. I knew I was not alone. And you know the feeling for the first time when you know you're not alone is the freedom. I didn't have to meet these women in person just to know they were out there. And before that, I read a lot of Virginia Woolf, and the book, which made a big impact, was A Room of One's Own. The importance of having your own room to write and to have your own money. And that hit me, and I always kept my career going throughout, even being married a second time and having kids. In fact, I was the main income earner. I had a very successful magazine publishing business that I started, but everyone I met with thought I then brought my ex-husband into the business, and they all thought it was his business, or it was a family-run business, and I would say no. I mean, my card would say founder and president. They still ask, but isn't this a family-run business? No.
Oh.
Are you sure?
Oh.
Am I sure? Yes, I'm pretty sure. And they would look at me, men particularly, and then after a while they say, well, I'm so proud, as if they're my father. I mean, these are clients. I'm so proud of you, or I'm so impressed. But still with some trepidation that this really can't be, because one of the magazines I published was a real estate development magazine, which is a very male-dominated industry. So how could a woman do this? And I don't know if I can say this on, you can edit it out, but I would say to them, you don't need a penis to run a magazine. You know, it's not a necessary requirement. But so,
goodness.
but still to this day, but running Women's E! News, of course, now I'm in the feminist activist community, so I don't get that anymore. But when I'm out socially, I was out a couple of years ago at a dinner party, and there was a white straight male there. I'm not around white straight men a lot, which I have to say is very pleasurable because I'm not questioned then about my success that much, or how did it happen, and my orientation. I came out as gay at the age of 49. And I have heard men who try to flirt with me who don't know that I'm gay, and when I tell them I am, these are the types of reactions I get. What a shame. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a shame, or what a loss, and then of course, can I join you? It's just so disgusting, and they can't. That sense of entitlement is just, does a woman go to a gay man? I mean, we may say, yes, that man's gorgeous, of course he's gay, but we're not going to say what a shame, or to him, or can I join you? We don't do that. We have respect. So anyway. So yes, so there I am at this dinner party, and this man asks me what I do for a living. So I tell him, and it was before I joined, I don't know if I joined Women's News yet, but I was writing for the Huffington Post at the time. So my card said PhD and writer for the Huffington Post. And the man looks at me and the card, and he says, wait, you have a PhD and you write for the Huffington Post? He says, this card isn't real, is it?
Oh.
And I said, who walks around with a fake business card? It's just like...
The cognitive dissonance. He just couldn't do that in his head.
And he didn't talk to me the rest of the night. And we sat down at dinner. There were maybe 6 of us. He would not talk to me. So I continually get this. And it's why I feel... So my book is about... And I'm not man bashing here. It's the patriarchy that I'm, we have to understand that the patriarchy does not help men either. We know, for example, that due to the patriarchal views and cultural norms in the U.S. and other countries where patriarchy exists, which is in just about every country to varying degrees, it negatively impacts men in terms of their ability to show emotion, right? To cry, to show sensitivity, to show compassion, to show empathy, etc., to be introspective, right? And so the stress that it adds to men who feel they cannot demonstrate these natural human emotions shows in the death rate of men and heart attacks and strokes, etc.
Oh, how interesting.
Of course, right? I mean, men don't live as long as women. They are more impacted by heart attack and stroke, because imagine if you had to you weren't allowed to just react normally to a situation if you wanted to cry, right? That's why we have tears. Men
That's
have
why
tears
we
as well as women. It's really
have.
detrimental to everybody. And let's not get into equal pay. The fact that women in the U.S. as many and in many countries do not have equal pay, and we're talking about white women. I think it's 80 something cents to the dollar. But then if you look at women of color, right, Black women and Latina women, it's even lower in comparison to white men. Well, would any, husband, if we're looking at heterosexual couples, say, no, I don't want another 20% of income coming into my family, or I don't want another 50% of income coming
Right,
in. But this is
right.
what is happening if by women not having equal pay. I mean, it would help everybody. Men would not have to feel the burden of being the primary income earner, which we
That's
know.
interesting. I
Yeah,
hadn't
yeah.
hadn't heard that particular point before. You cover a lot of crucial issues impacting women and girls. Are there any in particular that are closest to your heart?
I would say every one of them, every one of them is, well, clearly domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to children, you know, young girls, yes, I go back there to me being a little girl. We have no control over what families we're born into, right? For those who are fortunate enough to have been born into families where they receive unconditional love, whether it be from one parent or both, whether if they are supported for who they are, not based upon their gender, but what their talents are, as well as what their challenges are, and have parents who understand and support them in resolving those challenges. That's beautiful. They're very, very. It's all luck. It's luck
Mm-hmm.
whether you're born into families like that. Good luck and bad luck if you're not. The only thing we can do is when we're old enough to have control over how we then raise our children, if we do have children, to be different. And I have to say the best comeback I have is that when I raise my children, I have two. One's a 31-year-old boy and the other is a 27-year-old girl, is that I brought them up in a family completely opposite from the one that I had. And that is the best payback, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do that. The person who recommended I write the book that I did was Gloria Steinem. She said I should write a memoir because she knew. I mean, I've known her personally for about a dozen years, and a couple of years ago, I actually sat in her home. I was part of a writers group with her that met in her home every few weeks for a number of months a few years ago, and then I went to meet with her whenever I have a really pressing problem. She's wonderful. She always
Mm-hmm.
takes the time to meet with me, particularly, she lives in New York as well, primarily. And I met with her during the midterm elections of 2018 because I wanted to talk to her about how Women's News, as we said, it's a global women's news organization and it's the only one, a nonprofit, that reports on the most crucial issues impacting women and girls around the world. And I wanted to create a series to get people out to vote, right, in the U.S. because the midterm elections were coming up, and we saw what happened with the first 2 years of having not only a Republican president like Trump, but a Republican-run Senate and House, to make sure people got out to vote. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. And then I told her more about my family. She knew about it to some degree, but not to the extent. And to have like an hour and a half with Gloria Steinem just one-on-one is a rare,
Oh my
opportunity.
goodness.
So I've had her here and there, we've had lunch many times, but it's never been just us. So, and when I told him more as I was leaving, he said, Lori, you need to write a memoir because there's so many other women and girls who are living in similar environments, abusive environments, and they need to know because not only did I survive, but I triumphed. And they need to know that they're capable of doing so as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when I went to Guatemala. It's a long story, like a year later, and started writing my book there at a writer's retreat. But I didn't write, it's not the full memoir about me. it's again about me, and then these 30 other women from all over the world, from, you saw Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from England, and so many different continents. And each one, although they have different stories, one opened up a hospital in her name, right, in Somaliland, Edna Don Ismail, who um, to put an end not only to FGM, which she was a victim of, but since Somaliland had the highest uh, maternal mortality rate, to train female doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
To and the mortality rate has been significantly lowered since she opened her hospital. She's an amazing woman. She's in her early 80s. Talima Bowie, who won a Nobel Peace Prize for leading the uprising in Liberia to
Mm-hmm.
get rid of the head of the president of that country at the time. And she said that, I asked her, how did you get the courage, you and banding together a group of women who had no money, right, no power, to overthrow the government? And her response was, Lori, when your only other choice is death,
Mm-hmm.
which was their only other choice, they had no choice. It was either death or doing that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many stories of other women who fighting for anti-trafficking laws. Even Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, we had a great
Mm-hmm.
conversation, most people would not think was a feminist, but she was also a victim of bullying, about her weight. And she
Mm-hmm.
came to terms with that in a way that everybody can learn from in whatever their challenges are, because patriarchal societies put such pressure on women to look a certain way and
Mm-hmm.
girls to look a certain way from a very, very early age. To ambassadors, who went to Bosnia and reported on, what's happening there, and how women overthrew the government there. But the common thread among all these women, including myself, is that we used the qualities that patriarchal societies view as being soft and weak, because they're considered feminine, like I spoke about originally: compassion, empathy,
Mm-hmm.
introspection, kindness, right? They are actually the qualities that save lives, save communities, save families, and save countries and our planet. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the qualities that patriarchal societies see as being, hyper masculine, uh, and who then, create wars with
Yeah.
killings of innocent people. It takes courage to do what these women have done. And I finished this book, and if we want any further examples of this, I finished this book in February of 2020, right before COVID pandemic was, it was building, and then it became global, and most of the world shut down, right? So now if we looked at those countries run by women versus those run by
Yes.
hyper masculine males, let's
Yes.
see the results by women. Let's look at New Zealand, right? Let's look at
Mm-hmm.
Iceland. Let's look at Taiwan, which was right in close proximity to China, where COVID-19 first developed. If we look at these countries run by women and how they handled COVID, they were more successful at minimizing the
And Germany.
impact. And Germany, a major country, right? Major power, how they were able to more effectively control the impact of the pandemic versus those countries that were run by hypermasculine males. And let's look at the
Mm-hmm.
USA, but on Trump's watch, right? Over
Mm-hmm.
500,000, because he was afraid that it was going to ruin his reelection hopes. And of course, since the COVID was first killing people in Democratic states, they didn't care because fewer
Mm-hmm.
Democratic voters, so they might as well die, right? And I'm being very, I'm very honest and direct about this, because that's exactly what happened. He called it a hoax, and he's tried to strong arm the virus away. Well, you know what? That doesn't work. The virus
Mm-hmm.
is not afraid of Trump, Republicans, white patriarchy, supremacy, any of that, as we saw. Look at Brazil, also run by a hypermasculine male, which also suffered,
Mm-hmm.
another country that suffered more than
UK as well.
the UK, thank you, exactly, the UK and Russia, all run by
Mm-hmm.
four hyper-masculine males who refused to acknowledge that this pandemic was going to kill millions of people in their own countries as well. They were afraid of it. So you see, hypermasculinity denotes fear, right? That if nothing showed us during the coronavirus pandemic, it denotes fear being hypermasculine. It's to cover up one's insecurities and
Mm-hmm.
fragilities. Those women who use compassion and introspection and kindness, Cindy Arland from New Zealand, she faced it head on, and she actually
Mm-hmm.
spoke to children about it, right? She was on television there speaking to children saying, I understand your fears, right? She did not shy away from fear. She acknowledged the fear, saying it's okay to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is what we can do to reduce the probability that your health will be affected. You see, so once you acknowledge the fear, it's actually courageous, and then it gives you agency and more control over what to do about it to keep yourself safe and your loved ones safe, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is the difference. And so every woman in my book uses those qualities. And now, if we can only get more men to use those qualities, to say it's okay. It's actually, it takes courage to, and yes, we do have men like that. I mean, here I am. I'm right now in Canada. We have, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is
Mm-hmm.
certainly more. He's certainly not a hypermasculine male, right? He acknowledges the importance and incorporates in his cabinet, right, so many women, because we need a diversity of people, gender, orientation, right, race, religion. It's through having a diversity of responses, of ways to deal with challenges, that
Mm-hmm.
we come out of it with our best results, right? When we only have the views of one group of people, and which is primarily white men in so many countries, the way to combat, the way to deal with issues, whether it be a pandemic or whether it be a military threat to one's country or a terrorist attack, going back to Jacinda Arlen again, right?
Mm-hmm.
The attack
Mm-hmm.
on Muslims a few years
Mm-hmm.
ago,
In
she did not
Christchurch.
act out and respond out of hate for the Muslim people. The Christchurch massacre is what I'm referring to. She responded with compassion.
Yes.
Instead of saying, we're going to round up, I don't know, almost, who knows what could have happened. She did not do that. What she did within 3 days is ban military style assault
Mm-hmm.
weapons, first of all. And then, right, through compassion and empathy, she showed support for the Muslim community within her country. Instead of hatred, she reacted with love.
And you talk about this too in the book, the global warming crisis
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
is how are we going to address this? Because the way has been addressed is not going to cut it.
Yes, and that is an example of when greed and disrespect, greed and money and power, without regard for the earth, we are seeing the impact of it. We're witnessing it now in so many countries and continents around the globe. In the U.S., where we both, are citizens, we see it right now in some of the states in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
are experiencing the highest level of heat, up to
Mm-hmm.
120 degrees in the summer, whereas San Francisco, California is going through a cold spell. I mean, but this has been happening for years and years, and I really believe, and we need to do this, and finally we're starting is to go back to and understand and appreciate and acknowledge and respect the beliefs of indigenous communities and the way that they have always been in respecting our our planet and the earth. As one of the women in my book said, Diane Dillon Ridgely, she's an African American woman, she said, we have to mother earth, mother as a verb, okay?
Mm.
We have to mother earth. She has been here for us to provide us with all the natural resources upon
Mm.
which to live, to find, to build shelter, to eat, to drink water, etc., to grow crops. But through greed, right, we have neglected her, and we are continuing to. And indigenous peoples understand that we all interact, humans and nature, animals, right? We all, if one animal, type of animal, goes extinct, it affects every other
Mhm.
animal. It affects
Yep.
our earth, right? We see how
In some
glaciers,
ways, we can't even anticipate.
we do, right,
So complicated.
right. So it's having, if we can go back to those teachings of indigenous people and understanding how we all, um, everything we do, a daily basis, from the types of cups we use, to get our morning coffee, right? To everything we do, the trees we cut down, right? The oil, and how we mine for oil. Oh, it's everywhere. And we've lost respect for that. So this is what we are all experiencing. Glaciers are melting, right? And this is probably the last generation today that is being born that can help save us. Because after this generation, we're really on the cusp of not
It's
being
done.
able to turn back, not being able to,
Hmm.
and we may be there already. We don't know. But yes, it's also, we have found women are more apt to be more conscious of how humans are impacting, negatively impacting our environment.
Hmm.
We
Well, it's a
tend,
race, relational. It's more, the idea of that we have a relationship with the earth. It's just not
yes,
a sort of an endless supply of resources that we can exploit.
exactly, exactly. And we've been exploiting these resources tremendously, and now we're all paying the price. And that was also viewed as not true. The Republican, I know in the U.S., Republican committees and Senate, they continue to push back against any kind of climate-related preservation. It is beyond. I don't understand it. I don't. People say to me, "We don't understand why the Republican Senate and Republicans refuse to acknowledge facts, right? Acknowledge facts and how their own
Hmm.
children and grandchildren are going to be
Hmm.
and are being impacted by this. Is greed, power, money more important? And now, of course, women's rights are also being turned back in terms of reproductive
Hmm.
freedom, which is insane, but that's how women's bodies are controlled. Uh, I will not use the term, I'll use it just this one term because it's a fallacy. Pro-life. It is not about pro-life. It is pro-birth. That
Hmm.
we're there to protect the unborn. But once you were born, you're on your own, kid. No,
Hmm.
no child care. No federally funded child care. No
Hmm.
federally funded health care. And if you're born female, well, then your rights are even less than if you. So real.
Hmm.
I once wrote a piece about how females and males are only considered equal in the womb, and then once they're out of the womb, they're no longer equal, and it's really problematic, and it's actually quite terrifying. So that's why we need more women in office, which is occurring increasingly in many countries, particularly the U.S. If we look at Rwanda, for example, and one of the women I interviewed, Ambassador Swanee Hunt, who was the ambassador to Austria under then President Bill Clinton, Rwanda now has a 63% in their parliament is 63% women.
Wow.
And they're doing fabulously. But, you know, they needed to have an entire uprising to take out the entire government that existed then to then put a majority of women in office. I don't know if any other country really wants that to have to happen for women to be, you know.
Right.
So let's not, an entire uprising to take the patriarchy out, and that country is doing fabulously. So can't we do it in a more civil, peaceful way so that all views are in the room when major decisions are being made about the population, particularly since, for example, in the U.S., more than 50% are women? We need to have women in the room making those decisions. So, but it's occurring more and more, you know, in the U.S. now. The head of the Interior is an indigenous woman, Deb Haaland, which is absolutely fabulous. She is now going to look at whether there were schools that indoctrinated, as in Canada, these residential schools. Horrible what is coming out about how these residential schools took children away from their parents to indoctrinate them into the Western ways, and so many of those children died, and now their unmarked graves are being found. So that's but this has to we have to have a reckoning. We have to have a reckoning in terms of indigenous peoples, in terms of people of color, Black people. As you know, Black Lives Matter is having a reckoning, but it's not enough. There is so much anti-Semitism throughout the world as well, and of course anti-LGBTQ sentiments and killings. You know, people are being killed. I'll never forget, I stood under the Javits Center. The biggest glass ceiling in the world is a Javits Center, and I was there that night of the presidential election in 2016. And that was where Hillary Clinton was going to walk to the podium to accept becoming president, because every poll, everything showed, and certainly she was the only one of the two qualified. And I remember standing there under the glass ceiling. I was about 50 feet away from the podium, waiting, right? And then, of course, we see the numbers coming through. And when Donald Trump was declared president, there was a woman, we kind of got to know each other, the people standing there, you know, we had this, the people crying and everything. And this woman said to me, the first thing she said was, "I'm Jewish." She said, "I guess I'll now have to buy a gun to protect myself." And the first thing I said to myself was, you know, the thing that terrifies me most, the worst thing that can happen is for innocent people to die. So what I said to myself when he was named president, the first thing that came to my mind was that innocent people are going to die. And that, of course, I was thinking of the LGBTQ community specifically. But then, of course, and I wrote an article about this later, you know that Javits Center was then opened up when the pandemic in New York became so significant, and people, I mean, there were not enough hospital beds for people. The Javits Center became a place for people who were suffering from the virus to go to, and they opened up beds in the Javits Center, and that's where I thought, you know, innocent people were going to die. Well, there it was. Did I know there was going to be a pandemic? No, but I wrote an article about it, actually, and it was published in Ms. Magazine, about exactly in that building where I was terrified. I thought innocent people were going to die. There people were dying no more than 2 years later.
That's right. You just didn't know how
or what, right.
How it was going to go, but that was an example. So, Lori, where can people find out more about your work and Women's E-News and your book?
Okay. Well, we can start off with the book. It has its own website, and it's sheismebook.com. Okay, and they can learn all about the woman. Each chapter starts off with a quote from each woman that I think is the most, well, not only direct, but the most interesting and powerful quote from each woman. So each of their quotes is on that website. They can learn more about their website. Each of those women as well, where they're ordered. There is a book trailer about me as a young girl and what led me to write this book and how important my writing was for me. And then they can order the book on the website as well. And there are interviews about me in the book on that website as well. So that's sheismebook.com. And then Women's E-News, we are a nonprofit. So the website is womensenews.org. It's free to subscribe. We've always been free. We're in our 21st year. And you will find information. We have writers, journalists, located in some of the most dangerous parts of the world for women and girls. And we provide exclusive content, reporting on everything from child marriage to sex trafficking to FGM to domestic violence all over the world, LGBTQ, trans women, etc. Our point is to influence public policy by reporting on the truth, because most of our subscribers are activists and journalists from mainstream media. So we feed out to them. So our content, not unlike an Associated Press or a UPI, we provide them with exclusive content that they don't get anywhere else about women and girls. And then we've been picked up from everywhere from the New York Times to MSNBC, CNN, and community newspapers as well. We say we've been picked up in everywhere from New York to New Delhi and everywhere in between. So that's where you will find
what an accomplishment.
It's so hard. People say, what's real news and what isn't? Well, I always say go to a nonprofit organization's news site, because we are not paid. We do not receive money from any corporate interests. So all our reporting is truthful and transparent. So we are a nonprofit, and therefore there's no question that all the news we provide is factual. Important. And there's no other news site that does this. So please subscribe. And we also just started a podcast on Indigenous women leaders, where we have Indigenous female journalists interviewing them as regarding their biggest challenges, their biggest triumphs, both in the U.S. and in Canada. And we hope to expand in other parts of the world as well. So you can find that new podcast on Women's E-News as well.
Excellent. Lori Sokol, thank you so much for spending time with me today and talking about these massively important issues. I really appreciate your dedication and your passion and all that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you for creating this platform for those like us to discuss what we're doing, how we're doing it, and so that others can learn as well what they can do within their own homes, their communities, states, countries, provinces, etc. Again, there's no act that's too small to help someone else. Kindness goes a very, very long way. Just picture yourself when someone does something kind for you. It makes a big difference. So hopefully this is only the beginning.
That is beautiful.
Thank you again, Nicole.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down, and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.